I sentenced under Republic Act 64-25 when I was an artist then. At that time, if the offense is selling even very small quantity of shabu, the penalty is raction perpetua. Sinintas na ko. Sentence na. He was serving sentence. When Republic Act 1959 took effect, amending 64-25 and providing that even in case of pushing or selling, if it is less than 10 grams, the penalty is only prison to life. That law was given retroactive effect. And the one whom I sentenced after 6 years, 6 na taon na ako nun ni-release na ng Supreme Court. One senator was even questioning, bakit ni-release na? Dami-dami niya mga pusher. Si Judge Sandoval ang sentensya niya. Because a new law was passed, providing that even in case of selling or sale, it should be 10, if it is less than 10 grams, the penalty is only prison punishment. We gave that law retroactive effect. And so, it was given retroactive effect. That is an exception to the prospective characteristic of criminal law. If, let's say, this is the question. Pwede ba sulatan ito? Thank you. This is a possible question. Law A imposes 15 years imprisonment as penalty. The accused was charged with having violated Law A. Okay. 1982, while a trial was going on, 1982 na, another law was passed, Law A1, amending. Sabi ng Law A1, gawin nating 10 years imprisonment lang. Remember, the accused was charged under the law in 1980, where the penalty imposed was 15 years. If he will convict the accused, later on, the law is already effective. He cannot impose 15 years imprisonment. He has to impose only 10 years imprisonment. Even if at the time the act was committed, the penalty imposable was 15. Did you get it? Let us revise. Law A, 15 years, 1980. The accused committed it in 1982. Nagtratrial na. And Law A1 was passed, providing dapat yung 20 taon niya. Kasi maraming nagpa-violate. If he will be convicted, the court cannot impose 20 years imprisonment. The court will impose 15 years in accordance with Law 1. Because that was the penalty when it was good. In other words, para kayong malito, kung alin ang mabawa, what is favorable to the accused, you should impose the penalty. That's what we call the law is beneficial to the accused. It must be given retroactive effect. In case of conflict between the Spanish text and the English text, the Spanish text shall prevail, because the revised penal code was enacted in 1930 in the Spanish text. You know, we have revised this revised penal code. I was one of the resource persons. We came out with a code of crimes, 448 articles. I don't know what happened to that. Now we are still using the revised penal code, which was approved in 1930 in the Spanish text. It became effective only in 1932 because in the meantime it was translated to almost all languages, dialects, Filipino, Tagalog, Bisaya, Ilocano, Hilaigano, Pampangueño, lahat. So the Filipino people would know the meaning of the revised penal code. Up to now, circa 2010, even justices of the Supreme Court are debating on the actual meaning of treachery, evidence presentation, etc. But in case of conflict between the Spanish text and the English text, the Spanish text shall prevail. You remember the case of People versus Mangulogna, where four robbers robbed the house, and one of the robbers, in order only to scare the inmates of the house from following them, from looking at them, baka makilala sila, fired shot into the ceiling. It so happened that the owner of the house was hiding in the ceiling. He could not defend his house like a man. Pinabayaan niya niyang business niya ang mga anak na kinapagkahasa ng mga rabbit. Baka pagtalo lang siya. Eh, nung magpaputok ang one of the robbers, he was killed. The robbers were sentenced to death penalty because the crime is robbery with homicide. The penalty is reduction perpetua to death under Article 294. There were four armed malefactors. There was a one that is aggravating under paragraph 6 of Article 14. Then it was night time, also under paragraph 6, aggravating. Then it was committed in the dwelling of the offended party who did not give any provocation, aggravating. So, vita yun. When the Supreme Court assigned a very intelligent lawyer as the official during the appeal, he made this defense. Article 294 says, whenever by reason or on the occasion of robbery, homicide shall have been committed, the crime is robbery with homicide. He said the phrase, when by reason or on the occasion of robbery, homicide shall have been committed. The phrase shall have been committed means intentional homicide. And because this is clearly accidental homicide, there were two crimes committed. Robbery, where the penalty is not more than 10 years imprisonment, and homicide pro reckless imprudence, where the penalty is only 6 years. Sabi ng Supreme Court, well argued, but let us revisit the provisions of the revised penal code in Spanish. It says, cuando con motivo o con ocasión del robo resulta homicidio. Accurately translated, when by reason or the occasion of robbery, homicide results, whether intentional or accidental, is covered by the Spanish text. And so they were sentenced to, they were found guilty of robbery with homicide because the Spanish text shall prevail. The latest in robbery with homicide, but remember, the robbers robbed the bank. Then they were on their escape vehicle, driven by one of the robbers. He was driving so recklessly, the escape vehicle, it hit an ambulatory cigarette vendor, killing him. Accidente. When they were charged with robbery with homicide, they said, no, two crimes were committed. Robbery and then homicide for reckless imprudence. The Supreme Court said, as long as homicide was committed on the occasion of robbery. Remember, the crime is robbery with homicide, whether in accidental or intentional homicide. So do not forget, the ruling of the Supreme Court, it is robbery with homicide, even if it was accidental homicide. Impossible crime. Maybe, I don't know, I asked this in last bar examination. Impossible crime. any person performing an act which would have been an offense against persons or property were it not for the inherent impossibility of its accomplishment on account of the employment of inadequate or ineffectual means. First, performing an act which would have been an offense against persons or property were it not for the inherent impossibility of its accomplishment. Example, my dear attorney, Mr. A saw his mortal enemy lying down. He thought he was only sleeping. The truth of the matter is, he was already dead 30 minutes ago. So he got his gun, putang na ka, shooting the man. Can he be found guilty of murder? Definitely not. He was already dead. When he shot him, the crime committed is impossible crime. You want to impress the bar examiner? The crime committed is impossible crime to commit murder. Because although there was no actual damage done, there was criminal tendency on the part of the actor. Kahit pa pala, hindi niya alam eh. Suppose the problem is, he saw his mortal enemy lying down. He thought at first he was only sleeping. He got his gun, but he was trying to wake him up, to walk him up. Para makita siya pumatay. Oy, kalaban! Mulat mo mata mo, papatay kita. Talagang patay. Patay na pala ang dentist nito. And in order to vent his ire, he filed a plan. Sige, papatay ko ulit kita. Is there impossible crime? There is none. There was no intent to kill. Alam niya patay eh. In our first example, he thought he was only sleeping, so in order to kill him, he shot him. In our second example, he already knew that he was dead. So when he fired upon him, there is no impossible crime. There was only stupidity. But stupidity is not a crime. The likely question that would be asked of Mr. A saw a woman lying when he went up the house, which he thought was a vacant house. He saw a lady lying down. He thought the lady was only sleeping. And so, he removed his drawer. Nagtataka pa, ba't hindi ito tumatanggi? Siguro gusto talaga nito. Remove his brief and sex with the lady. The lady turned out to be dead 30 minutes ago. Was there an impossible crime? Wait. He was already dead. Dead, but been already dead. It would be an act which would have been an offense against persons or property. Is rape a crime against person? Oh yes. Under the new law, Republic Act 8353. Rape is a crime against person. And therefore, in that case, there is a kind of impossible crime. Impossible crime to commit rape. I cannot understand why some authorities are saying that is not a crime. Well, baka maging examiner yung who had that idea. Might say, this is a crime. Sa pangalan lang, impossible crime. And there is a penalty provided. Under Article 59, the penalty is arrest mayor. And a fine of 200 to 500 pesos, understand? Or not more than 500 pesos. So this is a crime. But pagka ang examiner ay naniniwala hindi crime, well, you avoid that. But you state that he is liable. This is an impossible crime under paragraph 4, paragraph 2 of Article 4. Do you know that when I was correcting the papers last year, may naglagay doon according to a brilliant opinion of a good Justice Sandoval. Full credit ang binigay ko. Siguro siyang balik sa amin na lang. Kasi I took a leave of absence.